He wants to know if he has to have a license to sell bait fish in the state of Kentucky.
This week on Kentucky Afield, we went live on social media to answer all of your spring fishing questions, and we're bringing you those answers right now. It's all next on Kentucky Afield.
Kentucky Afield. Every week, Kentucky Afield brings you features on hunting and fishing across the state.
What a nice fish.
An opportunity to hopefully get that bird in the lake.
Hey, we got another one over here.
There he is. Ooh, a nice one too. Boy, he's healthy.
What do we got?
That was awesome. Got the first help. Barely made it out in the field.
Got one big smallmouth.
Very nice.
Double point, they're in there.
There they go.
Look at that joker.
Woo!
That's a good one there.
Look at that. Beautiful. Whoa, this is a good one.
That's better than good, Chad.
Hello and welcome to Kentucky Afield. I'm your host, Chad Miles, and tonight you have tuned into our annual fishing question and answer show. I have a panel of experts here to answer all of your questions as it pertains to fishing, where to fish in Kentucky, as well as our law enforcement questions on what is legal and what's not here in the state of Kentucky. We've been running a contest, and we've got 4 questions we're going to ask here at the beginning. Those individuals have won a free spool of Seagar fishing line, so thank you for getting your questions in early. My panel of guests, let's get to them. First up, we got to my immediate left, we have Jeff Crosby, fisheries biologist, right here in this area, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Next up, we have Jeff Ross, who's the assistant fisheries director. Nice to have you.
Great. Thanks.
And then joining us in, the first time being on the show tonight, we have Sergeant Robert Owens from Floyd County, Kentucky. How you doing?
I'm fine, sir.
Thanks for making the trip up here to join us today.
Thanks for having me.
Question number 1 is from Teddy Criswell. What is the best month of the year for all around good fishing?
The best month I would probably say is May, but April, May, June are good months. May kind of being in the middle of that. I think May's a really good time. We see that on our krill surveys. That's when, bass are coming off the nest, bluegiller and shellcracker are getting up on the nest. You've got a lot of fishing going on that time of year. So probably May would be a really good month. One of the better.
A question like that, they did say for all around good fishing, and I'd say May is great.
Yes.
But it really depends on what you're fishing for, doesn't it? I mean, every different species, they kind of spawn and take turns and want to go in and spawn, and then the next fish will come in and spawn, and then they're using some of the same habitat.
Correct. Yes.
So it kind of changes. So if you're bass fishing, you'd probably be a little earlier, right?
Yes.
And
Crappie
if you're
too.
Crappie and bass, and if you were catfishing, it'd probably be a little later.
Maybe in June.
It'd be June. So you can't go wrong really from kind of now. I mean, fishing's getting pretty good. Have you been out yet?
I have not been out yet, but we've been on the water working. We've seen people out fishing. We've been seeing people catch fish.
Yeah,
So I'm ready to go.
I've been out a few times. Fishing's actually pretty good. So I can't complain. You get a week in February, a week where you start getting these 60-degree temperatures. It starts happening real fast. And we're getting ready to get some good weather this week too. So next question, AJ Huddleston. Why aren't all the lakes in Kentucky stocked with the exact same fish? Wow. No.
That's a heck of a question, actually. There's probably several reasons that we don't do that. Probably the biggest reason is different species have different habitat requirements. So, for example, bass, bluegill, crappie, warm water, not a problem. You find those in majority of lakes. But when you're talking walleye or musky or smallmouth, and stripers, they tend to need cooler water that's oxygenated. And a lot of our smaller lakes and such, you don't find that. You'll find the cold water, but there's no oxygen in it during the summer, down deep. So that's a big part, the habitat. And then we also got to factor in predation and the amount of forage. And, every lake has a carrying capacity, how much it can hold. So we don't want to overload predators in a lake and with not enough forage, or everything's going to be undernourished, thinner.
So there's kind of a biological reason and more of a, sociological issue for what people want to fish for. I mean, we take lakes right now throughout the state of Kentucky, and we have some that are considered trophy pan fishing lakes. We have trophy bass fishing lakes. they're just not arbitrarily picked. They're that way because they have the perfect conditions to be trophy lakes.
Yeah,
correct?
and some of them are within native habitats, that they existed in. We may have to stock them now, like the musky, but for the most part, we can, even for bass and bluegill, we can, Jeff on his lake can manipulate, making a dense population of bass to try to grow bigger bluegill by thinning the bluegill out through predation and growing bigger bluegill. So there's a lot of different things we can do, but a lot of it's habitat and the amount of predators.
Yeah. All right, that's a good answer. Next question, we have Brent Pomeroy. Wants to know if he needs an Indiana fishing license to fish the falls of the Ohio.
He does not. The department has a reciprocal agreement with Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. Therefore, he could have a Kentucky fishing license and fish the main stem of the Ohio, either by boat or from the bank.
Okay. So you can stay in Indiana and fish as long as you're fishing the mainstream of the lake.
That is correct.
We do that quite often. But now if you go back in the creeks,
Yep.
you need an Indiana license, right?
Correct.
All right. There you go. Hey, your license will even take you into Indiana as long as you're still fishing the Ohio River. Next question from Craig Banks. Name me 5 great water bodies to kayak fish for smallmouth or crappie. Wow, there you go. Water bodies, I don't know if he wants streams as water bodies or if he means reservoirs, but let's see what we get here.
We've got some really good streams, opportunities. Elkhorn Creek, of course, is a great smallmouth stream. You've got South Fork, Kentucky. You got Eagle Creek. You've got Buck Creek down south of us from here. Those are some really good streams. Upper part of Cumberland, the Upper Cumberland's really good for smallmouth. And probably Green River is probably one of the better ones. The Green River proper, below the lake, has some really, really good smallmouth in it. So we've got some great opportunities for smallmouth in these streams, especially if you're kayaking. Crappie-wise, you're probably looking at a small lake or, upper portions of one of our bigger lakes where you can kind of get away from the boaters. But, upper part of Taylorsville would probably be an option for crappie. Some small lakes like Elmer or Beaver, and I'm sure we've got a lot of other little lakes around the state. Not sure exactly where he's calling from or sending a text from, but those are really good opportunities for catching a few crappie this time of year.
Anything down your way that for crappie? Where do you see people that are small body of water that they could potentially go out and catch crappie?
The North Fork is, at times can be good.
Okay.
I typically fish that every now and then, wade fishing, but Elkhorn Creek being the big one, it's really good water.
Yeah, I know you really like to stream fish, and so we thought we'd get your take on that. So we were talking earlier, you're a smallmouth fisherman, and you really enjoy that type of thing. Next question, what is the best lake in Kentucky to hook into a muskie?
Green River Lake is good. Of course, Cave Run, those are really 2 really good lakes that you could probably hook into a muskie. You've got Buckhorn.
And Dewey's up and coming.
Yeah, so the Dewey Lake, now how long have they been in there now? Is this about the year 7, 6 or 7?
Probably right in that range. I know they're starting to see, they sampled for them this last year and they saw some really nice fish.
Okay.
So.
What is the regs on Dewey as far as keeping a muskie?
It's 140 inches.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know for a while there was muskie there, but there weren't any reaching that point. Not that I'd probably keep a muskie, any predator fish like that, I'd probably release it. But if you did want to keep one, they're probably that size now. They're over 40 inches, right?
Yeah, I think they're right there.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some over that we haven't even seen, but they're all kind of, the early stockings are up at that size.
I'll tell you what, if you ever want to make a trip down in Floyd County, Dewey Lake is a beautiful place to be, isn't it?
Yep.
That's Ginny Wiley State Park is right on that, right?
Yes, sir.
Looking for a spring getaway trip, there you go. Next question here is coming from a texter. This is, can you use rainbow trout as bait in the Cumberland River below Wolf Creek Dam? This is an interesting question. Go ahead.
You cannot. You can't
cannot
use any type of sport fish for bait fishing in Kentucky.
And I get this question asked to me a lot of times because I do think that Tennessee has different rules and regulations that does allow that. And there's some guide services down there, completely legal if they're in Tennessee waters, that are using trout and they post these big pictures, they catch these fish. So I get asked that question a lot, but if you're in Kentucky waters, no sport fish can be used as bait. Not a trout for sure.
Yep.
All right. Next question is from Steve. Are the spotted bass in Lake Cumberland in decline? Any thoughts on Lake Cumberland spotted bass population?
I don't think they are. I mean, a couple of years ago, we actually saw some of the highest numbers we've seen. So, you know, they're going to vary here and there, but our data doesn't show they're in decline at all.
I think the black spotted bass made up like 51% of the black bass that was sampled in Cumberland in 2022, I believe is what I was looking at. It made up a pretty good portion of the, so I think goes back to what Jeff was saying. It's
51% in Lake Cumberland, and when you got 3 black bass species really prevalent there, that's a lot. It's a whole lot of them. All right. Next question is from James Mead. Where is the best crappie lake close to Richmond?
I don't think Reba is a big crappie lake, and Wilgreen
is okay.
Yeah, and maybe going up your way, or
Harrington. You know, we're doing some stocking in Harrington right now of black nose crappie, which we're getting some really interesting comments about these fish with racing stripes. We're starting to see some of those fish that we've been stocking coming into the fishery. So I mean, that's an option. I think Cumberland down the road is not too bad.
Cumberland and Laurel on the upper end of Laurel, because the lower end's a little oligotrophic as well, but it actually changes as the higher up in the lake you get.
What about Linville? Does that have crappie in it at all?
I'd say there's crappie, but it's probably limited.
Limited crappie, okay. I'm trying to think of something else close by. So there you go. So you got big waters. You've given big waters if you want to go to Cumberland. You're not that far away if you want smaller places. Harrington, which is deep, but it's a smaller body of water. And what other ones you say?
I was just thinking about the Cumberland and Laurel.
Yeah, Cedar Creek Lake.
Cedar Creek may not be a bad option.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've caught some big crappie at Cedar Creek bass fishing. They'll sure hit a little swim bait or a crankbait there. So, you got any suggestions on that?
The ones close to me would probably be Dewey or Yatesville Lake.
Okay. Next question's from Barry. What is the current situation with invasive carp throughout the state, more specifically in the Salt River and the Ohio River around the Louisville area? So first off, what are we finding out about the carp?
They're definitely in that area. The mouth of the Salt gets a ton of them. And they're all the way up, several pools up as well. So they're there. We're on the Ohio, most of our work is further up, trying to slow down the progression upriver. We do have contract fishermen out that are trying to get as many as they can and slow that down. One of the biggest issues is, the big lake, Sparkling in Kentucky and that area as well. But the good news is statewide, I think in 2023, they brought in close to 12.5 million pounds, the commercial fishermen.
Oh my God.
So I mean, we're hitting them hard.
Are we getting any data down on the lakes where some of the programs they put in place, obviously this is one of the programs where they're taking the fish out, but the biofence, are we getting any data on that? Because some of the guys I talked to there say the fishing at Kentucky and Barkley Lake is on the increase.
Yeah, I think the bioacoustical fish, they call it the BAF.
Yeah.
It's effective. Obviously it's not 100% effective, but I think right now through the testing phase, it's showing that it can limit the amount going through into the big lakes. So if we can limit and then increase the commercial harvest, you should be able to knock down the total numbers in the lake.
It seems like some of the most effective
and people are saying they're not, seeing them quite as much jumping, and fishing on the big lakes is actually really good.
Yeah, I've heard that the fishing is really picking up. Probably the best thing that happened is we're not really sure exactly what caused it, but is when they come up and they stress out and we get massive die-offs.
Yeah, down the tailwaters.
Have we seen any of that?
That's usually in the spring sometimes, so it's probably coming in a month or two, I would guess.
So if you're down there in that neck of the woods and you see a massive die-off, that's not necessarily a bad thing, is it?
Yeah, but the invasive carp are all through the Louisville area. Not much we can do about it. I don't think they're at a density that's, going to offset fishing or anything.
I recently was on the Ohio River. We were doing some catfishing, and the fishing was really good. So that opportunity down there below the falls where he's asking is A great place to go spend an afternoon or a morning fishing, that's for sure. Next question is from Zach Smith. It says he's having a hard time finding 10-inch crappie on Taylorsville Lake. Could it be due to the high pressure?
Well, I think right now we're seeing good numbers of fish in the lake, and we actually are seeing the growth rates drop off a little bit because we are getting a little bit of a buildup. But we're still seeing those big fish numbers being very stable too. It's just we've got a buildup of these smaller fish that the growth has slowed down a little bit. Our goal with going to that 10 was we had a lot of fish that were blowing through and getting caught before they had a chance to spawn. So this was our chance to try to keep some in there, maybe get some better spawns, and we have. But again, that's led to a little bit of a buildup of these smaller fish and that slowing of growth. We'd really like to see that growth stay what it was, and we'd see those fish moving into that 10-inch a lot faster, but we're not seeing that. We're actually seeing them slow a little bit, but we're still seeing good numbers of those bigger fish. They're out there.
Interesting thing, and I think a lot of fish do this, but fish tend to group kind of by size, right? So if you're in there and you're catching crappie and they're all 6 to 8 inches long, you either have a good time and sit there and enjoy catching those, or change. You know, if you're in a creek, go to the main lake. If you're in the main lake, maybe check a deeper, more current. Because when you start finding bigger fish, you're probably going to find a lot more bigger fish. They're going to be, and not always, but they a lot of times group by size, don't they?
Yes, I always feel like at Taylorsville, you want to keep moving, even when you're crappie fishing, because you'll be in those schools with those little bit smaller ones, but you'll hit those smaller schools but bigger fish, and you can catch several, and then you'll just have to keep moving till you find that next school.
I experienced this earlier this month. I mean, we went up there and caught 50 or 60, but I don't know how many we had to catch to find our first keeper. But when we did find a keeper, they were all in that similar class where they were bigger, like 10 in a row that were keepers. We were like, hey, this is, we finally found them. So keep moving, keep giving it a try, because they're in there. But when you find them, you probably have found a bunch of them. So next question is from Jay Coates. He says that he can find the Finns Lake trout stocking on the website, but he was wondering if they post the catfish stocking schedule. On the stocking schedule, what all is on there and available?
I think it gets updated on the Finns page, which is on our main fishing page. You can go to the Finns page, and it has the trout and the catfish. I think the catfish start in March.
Okay. So you hadn't seen any, but they haven't started stocking at those at this point in time.
They're still stocking trout. In fact, they'll stock this month and next month.
Okay. So if you're looking for a catfish stock, you can come back here in a month or two, and that'll be on.
And then they'll actually put the dates that they stock. They don't announce them ahead of time. I think they put, well, no, they do put them on there. I think a little bit early of when they plan. Yeah. But people always got to remember, when you're raising and stocking fish, there can be a hiccup that'll put our trucks off a day or something like that. So we have people that get upset that the fish didn't show up that day, and sometimes it's just something happened at the hatchery and we didn't want to kill them, so we had to wait a day and then bring them.
Yeah. So, but keep checking, because the trout stocking is currently going on and on there, and then the catfish stocking will start in March time frame. All right. Next question from Tyler Logston. How are the walleye doing in the Nolan River Lake? So I don't know if he's asking about the river or the actual lake, but what are you finding about walleye there?
Nolan and Green are just a mystery to us, because we stock a lot of walleye in there, and we don't see the returns. And it's something that we need to try to investigate a little bit more, whether it's habitat or something. But or maybe the effort is just not really heavy on them. But you do hear from anglers that are trying to catch them, and they just can't find them. Yeah. But we stock a lot in those lakes. They're in there, and you can catch them, but I think the densities are okay.
So if you were going to target walleye, what month would you go, and what would your approach be?
I guess you can go throughout the year, because even in the middle of summer at like Cumberland, we've gone and used the worm harness rigs and bottom bounce. You just got to find the temperature, like right at the thermocline where there's still oxygen and cool. if they find their spot, they're all going to be like right there.
So when you found them, huh?
Yeah, but I think you can catch them definitely in the spring and other times of the year.
You know, they're going to make a run, you know, in the springtime up in the river, you know, and I think that's been popular in the past in some of these lakes. But, you know, Jeff's right, you know, you get into June and July, that bottom bouncer's fun to catching a few.
It probably concentrate, it may make it actually a little easier because it concentrates them. They all want to be in a certain layer of the lake instead of spread throughout, you know, when it's cooler water.
I tell you what, once that thermocline hits and once it's in place, knowing the depth of that's in the body of water you're fishing may be one of the best pieces of information that you can possibly have, especially when you're targeting a fish that prefers cooler water like a walleye, because they're going to be as low as they can possibly go, the coolest water they can possibly find, but still has a sufficient amount of oxygen. Mark my word, that's where they're going to be. So that knowing that thermocline, and that information is pretty easily available. I mean, some people you can see it on certain electronics. You can locate it on there. If you see a line on there, you're like, what in the world is that? It's all at, if you're Taylorsville Lake, it's 12 to 13 feet at maximum. Other lakes, it might be deeper than that, but that's probably what that is. But you can also go and get that information through the Army Corps of Engineer on a daily basis when they update that info. Check out that thermocline because if you're fishing for walleye at Taylorsville, or excuse me, at Nolin or Green River in the summertime, once thermocline hits, know where it's at and fish just a foot or so above it, right? Or right in that thermocline or a little above it. That's where you're going to want to be. I
know at like Nolin, they see some really big walleye way up in the river if you can get access up in there. They see some really nice ones up there.
Okay.
I think the bigger ones are seen upriver.
And I think that tends to happen right before the white bass run, which could be starting up pretty soon. Could be kind of now, right? Like we're getting pretty close to where I'm talking about the walleye run that takes place beforehand wouldn't be a bad idea to start checking some of those waterways, right?
I would say yes.
Next question is from Josh. What lakes offer good fishing in the summer with low population of recreational boaters? Man, that's a good question. And first one comes to mind is the one that doesn't allow a whole lot of recreational boating, right? That's Cedar Creek?
Cedar Creek, yes.
Yeah. Give me some other ones.
I mean, a lot of the smaller lakes, department-owned lakes, would probably be some, you know, good options. Most of those lakes you can at least idle, but you're not going to be dealing with the water skiers or jet skis. But you know, that would be some options. A lot of small department-owned lakes, but
you got a lot of lakes that have just. If you go to our guide in the boating section, it lists like what lakes are trolling motor only. Those lakes are probably going to be nice. I think Reba is an example that trolling motor only, and there's a bunch of them. Yeah. If you're trying to get away from people blowing around the lake and whatever, that's a good choice. And they're all listed under trolling motor only.
I tell you what, anytime you get a chance to fish during the week, I mean, weekends obviously and holiday weekends are going to have a lot more of that. And if you can get away during the week, that's always a good option. Any lakes that you see where it's got just less pressure that you think, man, it'd be a beautiful day to be out here fishing?
Probably Pambo Lake in Breathitt County.
Okay.
And maybe Fish Pond in Jenkins.
Okay. Next question is Chad Cooper. Where can someone find sauger on Taylorsville Lake during the summer months?
Oh, wow. Summer months, I'd still say, you know, they really seem to like those mud flats. Where you would find white bass seems to be, you know, were great places to target those sauger. So, I mean, that upper lake, you know, there's a lot of those big mud flats. Shad get out on that, you know, so and you've got a lot of the hybrids, the white bass and those sauger move in there also after those schools of shad. So those are the areas I would kind of key on. You know, I still think there'll probably be some up toward the river, not quite up in the river per se, but that upper section I think is going to be a really good section to key on. That Van Buren, Chowning Lane area is definitely where I would stay. And, you know, they've been difficult, you know, except during the spring run. And they seem to have a run which should be starting up here in about a month or so. And they've been very people have done a very good job catching them during that time. But as they move back out in the lake, it get a little bit tougher. So.
You know, it's interesting you say that kind of fish in areas where you would catch white bass. It seems like when I've gone up there to target sauger, that any day I've caught sauger, I've mixed them in with a mixed bag of white bass and some hybrids as well. So it seems to be that that's kind of where they tend to be. They're probably foraging on some of the same type of fish. They both get the same kind of cooler oxygenated water. It just kind of makes sense that that's why they're all there together. But when I target one or the other, it seems like it's not like you can't just catch sauger. And even if the baits get a little bigger, the white bass are aggressive. They'll hit them, you know. So it seems like that's a good tip. Next question is coming from Charles. What is the most reliable source to know if a stream is open to the public for wading? Man, this is a good question. You got any tips or trades to know if a stream is open for public wade fishing?
The department website would be probably the first place that I would check. It's probably getting to know your area type question.
Now, we do have a couple of resources. I know that Lee McClellan is a writer for the Kentucky Afield magazine that loves to stream fish. I mean, that's kind of his passion. He puts out Blue Water Trails, and Blue Water Trails talks a lot about input and takeout locations and where we have agreements to fish. So that might be a really good resource. You mentioned the department website. I'm pretty sure that all of Blue Water Trails information, including maps, like say put in, take out, fishing tips. We fished a bunch of them here on Kentucky Afield. That might be a really good place to kind of go. But as far as if there's a resource available, if a stream runs through somebody's property, just know if you can and can't fish it. Probably going to need to start knocking on some doors and asking permission in that sense.
Yeah, I would just personally, I would treat it as you would hunting. Knock on a door just to make sure, be on the safe side.
Yeah. All right, that's a good tip. Next question, Greg. Does the Dix River and Harrington Tailwater still have a good number of trout?
Well, we are stocking them annually. The problem we're seeing right now is that we're not seeing a lot of holdovers. So it's staying pretty much, stockable trouts, and we're just not getting that holdover. And that's probably a function of when we get some flooding, the Kentucky River will back up into there, and it causes some water quality issues and doesn't allow those fish the ability to hold over as well. And that's what we've seen, especially in the last decade that's been wetter. And they just haven't held over very well. But we are stocking them annually. There's trout in there, because they're getting stocked every couple months.
Okay. So. Next question is from Wendell. He wants to know if he has to have a license to sell bait fish in the state of Kentucky. Interesting question.
Yes, you would. A commercial license would be the appropriate license to have to be able to sell live bait.
And you kind of need to know what you're doing, even if you have a license too, because transporting any type of bait can be a major issue, right?
Correct.
Yeah, the application for that requires you to list everything you're selling, because we need to see what you're selling, make sure we're okay with it. So all those applications, if you go to commercial fishing link on our website, there's all the applications are right there, and you can pick that one and you'll see that you got it. That one and the transportation license both make you put down all the species that you're planning on selling or transporting.
Okay.
And a lot of that's to make sure we don't get, invasive species or non-native fish coming in that we don't want.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of seen what the Asian carp have done, and there are other invasive species out there across the country that we don't want. So we've kind of got the Asian carp, they're here, but we want to make sure that, in the best of intentions, when a fish is that big, it looks pretty harmless, but it's hard to tell some of these minnow species from other game fish species, and you don't want to get caught accidentally bringing in an invasive fish, and you don't want to get caught accidentally selling a sport fish and people use it for bait. That's all around a bad deal, right? So they're on the website, and you go on there.
Commercial fishing. If you go to the fishing page, down at the bottom, there's a green box that has a bunch of links. Look for commercial fishing. I think it's on the right side, and all the applications are there.
Well, I love seeing bait shops, so I hope Wendell pursues that option and goes on there and does it the right way and opens him a bait shop. That'd be great. All right, next question is from a texter. Has the department used artificial habitat structures anywhere in Kentucky? And if so, have they proven to be effective in maintaining and increasing numbers? This is an interesting question. I know the answer. Tell me a little bit about what he could be talking about when he says artificial habitat
Yeah,
structures.
I'm guessing that's like your Shelby cubes and your mossbacks, and which is more of not natural materials. We do put out some, we'll call them plastic structures, artificial structures. When kind of mixed with a little bit of natural, yeah, they do pretty well. They do okay. I mean, they will hold some fish. I like the natural personally better because I think they do hold fish better than the plastics. But people like to fish those plastics. You don't get hung up in them as much. And but there's areas, yes, they do well in, do okay in, and there's others that don't do as well. So and it's like our natural too. So.
The great thing about them is that they last for a long, long time, and you can pull a hook through it without being hung every single time. But natural, like you say, is always going to be best when it comes to holding bait fish, right? I'm guessing that when that matter, whatever it may be, cedar trees tends to be one that we use a lot, or a decaying tree. They've got bugs and things in them, and when they decay, they probably are putting oxygen and things into the water, or it could make, who knows what, there's a host of reasons it could be better, right?
Yeah, it just creates that cover that the fish need. It allows, where the natural has a better ability to, a lot of those algae and those insects to colonize on a little bit better. You still can do that with the plastic, over time, the longer they're in there, they colonize a little bit better, with those algae, which draw in those bugs, which draw in the small fish, which draw in the bigger fish. And yeah, the habitat's pretty important. I think across the state, there's a whole lot more effort being put into doing habitat work. We've been able to acquire some really good equipment over the last, over the last decade, and which allows us to get a lot of this done. I mean, efficiently, quickly, and it's beneficial to the fish and the sportsman.
We've got some good partners too. I know we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers in some of our lakes, and well, also to build some shoreline stabilization, which turns into fish habitat. I know we went to Cave Run and they were putting in some big structures out there for fishing, for fishing and to hold fish. So they're definitely out there. And if you want to locate those, again, go to the website or download the app, because anytime we put one of those in, within a week or two, they're on the website and available to go fish. So.
And you can get, you can upload all that GPX data to your depth finder. If you can't figure it out, go to YouTube. There's things that show you how to do it. But the other thing is most of those things are on Google Maps just to see a picture of where they're at. And if that person's interested in fishing the artificial stuff, we actually have different icons based on whether it's brush or plastic or other things. So he could, if he really wants to go after a certain kind, you can actually find where those are at on the lake.
Oh yeah, so you
on
can,
the Google Maps.
Or if you're just on a pattern where they tend to be holding tight to whatever. Tell me some of the icons you can see on there. I mean,
It's anything from like a Christmas tree. There's pallet structures. We'll use pallets. Like a teepee form. It creates a really nice little crib that the fish like to use. There may be mossbacks, Shelby cubes, different stuff like that. But there's a lot of icons. Maybe a rock pile. I mean, we've done that in the past. So, but you can go through the app that we've been talking about, and I've done that before on my phone on the lake, and pull that up and be on the lake, and hey, I'm over top of one. It's really nice. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of different ways to get to that information and use it as a fisherman.
There's so much information on our website, and it seems like that about everything you want's probably there. It's how to access it. And I do think that the app does a good job of making it easier to access what information you might be looking for.
And so if you can't figure it out and you've tried, you can call any of our district offices, call Frankfurt, and somebody will get you where you need to go.
Yeah.
Even we have at times have trouble like, where is this at?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know.
On the website and on the app.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's a good tip. I mean, all of our district offices are listed on the web page. If you can't find those to ask that question, then you can always call our info line. Our info line has a whole host of very great information specialists that can answer all your questions, both hunting and fishing. You can always reach them at 1-800-858-1549. So make sure you reach out to them and ask them any question you may have. Next question is from a texter. What is your favorite fish to eat from Kentucky? Wants to know from each of us your favorite fish species to eat. Man, this is kind of a tough one because there are some that I prefer, and then there's just several that I won't turn down for any reason. So, all right, Jeff, what do you think?
Crappie.
Crappie. That's a very good one to go with. It's a panfish. They come in good numbers, or usually make a really good fillet, and you usually catch them in good numbers.
And they're mild, and they just got good for me. I mean, and you could throw the panfish as bluegill and shellcracker into that too. Yeah. But crappie are, I think, our family's favorites.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great choice.
I think, well, walleye is really good, but of course I'm not very good at catching them, so usually I draw back to crappie. But walleye is also a really mild, kind of a rich tasting fish.
Yeah.
You know, sauger and saugeye would be the same.
Okay.
So that's a good fish to take home if you can.
And they get really big, so it doesn't take a whole lot of them. If you catch a couple, you're in good shape.
Mine would probably be catfish. Catfish or crappie, you know. That's probably my top two favorite.
Those are excellent choices as well. We got plenty of fisheries across the state that offers access to catfish, and there's a lot of resources out there on how to fillet all these species. Or if you want to go take one of our classes, our field to fork or hook and cook style classes, those are great resources to show you exactly how to go from catching a fish to making a meal out of it. And I think for me, I mean, none of the ones you said are bad. They're all fantastic choices. I really think that I like one that I can grill, and that takes a fish that's very firm fleshed. For me, if you know how to fillet a striper or a hybrid and get all the red meat out of it, you just get big, firm pieces of flesh, and those are really good on the grill. So I think that we all went with something different, and none of them are bad choices. I'd take any of them tonight for dinner, actually. So those are great choices. Good question. Next question is Samantha. Once I asked Sergeant Owens, what is the most common fishing violation that you come across in the field?
Would probably be the license violation.
Okay.
Probably second would be size and creel, but most importantly, probably the license violation itself, not having one, either resident or non-resident.
Okay. The fishing license if you had a fishing license all last year, it expires at the end of this month. So if that's the most common violation, make sure that you hop either online or go to your local retailer that may carry those licenses and pick that up. If you do get one, either way, you can go and you can look that up. And I know that your phone is not a printed signed copy, but there's a way you can save it on the app where you at least have that there. But now now you got your phone, and if it goes dead or you lose your phone or whatever, you don't have your license. So make sure you print a copy of it off as well.
Correct. And if you just do the electronic copy on your phone, it is also required that you have an ID, some type of identification.
Okay, so you need your identification, but print off a copy. Hey, and now it's been free for several years. Go to your My Profile in there, and you can print off as many copies as you need. Put one in your boat, put one in your pocket, but it's free to do that. Go in there and print that off. So right now's the time. The license expired. This year we get an extra day, right?
Yeah.
It goes February the 29th because it's a leap year, but March 1, you need your new license. That'll be your 2024-25 license year for fishing. So next question. How is the Kentucky River recovering since the most recent whiskey spill?
It's doing pretty well, actually. I've been getting a lot of good reports from the guys that I know that fish it. Anything from smallmouth, having some pretty good smallmouth trips. We've been stocking, sauger. We stock hybrid striped bass annually. We do quite a bit of musky stocking throughout the river. After that kill, we did a couple years of stocking channels and blues, blue catfish back into the river, and so actually it's coming back pretty well. And, through natural reproduction, but also a little bit of stocking along with it.
What pool was the spill in?
The spill was actually in pool 4, this last one.
Okay.
And it hit 3 pretty hard and a little bit of 2.
Okay.
But it was. I got to deal with both of them, and I was hoping to never see it again that second time. But it's recovered pretty well.
So obviously, if you're upriver from that, you're going to have very little to no impacts whatsoever.
Right, correct. You get up into pool 5, 6, 7, and up, then that wasn't an issue for those pools.
So any from 4 down,
pretty much the lower part of 4 and 3, 2, maybe a little bit of 1, but yeah.
But the stocking is going well, and the fishing is coming back.
Yes.
All right. We have a texting question here. Which lakes are the best to fish and catch flathead catfish? All right. What do you think here? Tips on catching flathead catfish. It's a unique fish, isn't it?
Yeah, I know Barron does well.
I think Nolan does pretty well.
Nolan, I think Dewey maybe?
Dewey's, yeah.
Those are ones that stand out, but a lot of the bigger reservoirs have them for sure.
We're starting to see quite a few at Taylorsville in our district. And and I've caught a few myself. Kind of get surprised, think you got a big bass on or something. It ends up being a flathead. But shocking, and we're seeing lots of little ones. And so, there's a few in Taylorsville these days that you can catch.
More of a live bait type catfish. Versus channels or something.
Yeah, you would think that a flathead would be one of those fish that kind of sit on the bottom that would just be waiting for something to come by. But when I have accidentally caught flatheads, it's been on a moving bait, and so they will apparently chase a bait down and take it on. But they like the live bait is what I've heard from people who catch them quite a bit, that they tend to use live stuff, not cut bait, but actual bait that's alive. Bluegill or something like
whatever,
that. Yep. So that's an interesting thing. And I know that people do a lot of rock fishing, noodle fishing. Nolan, you guys talked about Barron, but Kentucky Lake and has quite a few of those as well. So I know when we went down there hand grabbing fish, that's where we were at, and we saw quite a few flatheads.
I think Cave Run's got them too. At least I know there's hand grabbing that goes on there.
Okay. So the next question is from Sophie from Fleming County. Wants to know where the best streams and creeks for trout fishing. This is an interesting question.
Yeah, so we can put trout in almost any stream when it's cold. When it gets over 70 degrees, they're not going to make it. So a lot of our streams are what we call put and take. We'll put them in and you go catch them, because by June or later in June, they're probably going to not be there anymore because it's too warm. The Cumberland tailwater is a big one. It's struggled recently. I think a lot of the changes in flow in it have caused some issues. But Trammell's good, Jennings Creek's good. You've got Gunpowder maybe?
Yeah, we've got Big Bone, Floyd's Fork, Gunpowder, to name a few. Like at the Dick's tailwater, those are some areas that trout go into, and you have an opportunity to catch a few. Yeah.
So obviously below the big
tailwater.
dams and the tailwaters, you've got opportunities because they're pulling that water from deep enough that it's cool enough to support them even in the summertime. Any other streams that we have that are big enough that come up out of the ground where the water is still pretty cool for the first few miles that provide year-round?
Yeah, Trammell and Jennings, definitely. Okay. Those are down southwest in that karst area, cave-like area. What other ones do we have? I'm trying to think. There's some different ones. We're going to start stocking Blacklick Creek in Auburn, Kentucky, which is like right in the park, but I think there's a spring that starts right above it. So it's another example. We'll find these places, and if we've got enough trout through production, we'll stock them. But the tailwaters are good. I mean, out east you got Paintsville for sure.
Yeah, they put
a
them
good
both
one.
in tailwaters and lake.
Yeah.
At Paintsville.
Trout, I tell you what, with the cool water, trout fishing is great because they're pretty readily accessible. I mean, they want to eat and they bite pretty well, don't they?
Southeast, Looney Creek's another one. That comes out of like a mine or something, so it's keeping it cool as it travels through there, I guess. But it's got good trout fishing in it too.
So a good tip when you're trout fishing in streams and you're wanting to target trout specifically, if it's comfortable for you to be standing in that water, it's probably not without waders on,
Yeah.
bare feet or shoes on, and you're getting wet and that water's touching your skin. If that's comfortable to you, it's probably too warm for trout, right?
Yep.
At 60 degrees, 70 degrees, you're saying 70, they start dying off.
Yeah, and they're stressing you even before you get to that a little bit. But
so if that water temperature is up over 70, then it's probably a put and take resource. Even if we highlight it as a trout fishery, if it's below that temperature, it's probably time to fish for a different species, right? Next question here is from a texter. It's on our text line, wanting to know if there are any studies on cormorant effects on fish populations in Kentucky. If you don't know what a cormorant is, explain to me what a cormorant is. I see them throughout the state in places.
yeah, out west they deal with them a lot, and there was a study out there where they looked into what they're eating because there was a lot of thought that they were eating all the crappie and such, but really the percentage of crappie and sport fish in their stomachs was not that high. There was a lot of shad, and actually at one point they were getting, the 1 year that we had a natural spawn of invasive carp in those lakes, I think they found that they were feeding on those as well.
Okay.
But I don't know how to explain them. They're fish eaters. They tend to, dive down into the water. You'll see them, around, but it seems like out west we've had the biggest issues with them.
It's a bird that can dive, and it's describe what a cormorant looks like if someone sees them.
It's kind of a black bird, kind of a long neck. I mean,
Yeah.
they're pretty ugly.
And coming from a fishery biologist,
That's
they're
right.
like, no, they're eating fish.
They're eating our fish.
But you're saying that all the studies have shown that they're not necessarily targeting a particular species.
Well, at least out west. I mean, there's been a lot of studies up in Minnesota and the northern states, and I can't speak to those, but
Yeah.
I think there is some preying on sport fish.
I know that up there, a lot of times I've seen pictures when cormorants come in, sometimes it's big numbers.
Yes.
Do we see that in Kentucky where all of a sudden it's 200, 300, 500 birds, or is it usually 20, 30 birds?
Well, in our area, we'll see 20, 30 birds.
Yeah.
We haven't seen
I
the
think
big
it's
ones.
probably
but
higher densities
out
out west.
I think maybe a little bit different.
Okay.
We need to have a wildlife person on this show.
Yeah. The cormorant, that's
All
a
us
fish.
fish guys, we have no idea.
Yeah.
It flies. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily your all's cup of tea, huh? But all right. But there are definitely fish-eating birds. I mean, it's a species of bird, and they're going to go where fish is readily available, and they're going to probably eat what they can get their hands on. But
Right.
when the shad spawn takes place, and that's about the size of fish, it's nice and easy for them. I'm guessing that's what they're going to take. Right?
Yeah, we do have to deal with them a little bit, our hatcheries too, I think.
But
Oh, yeah.
they're going after what's most abundant, and that's shad. I mean, it's.
Next question is a text question. Any tips on his son Jack Guffey, who likes to fish Lake Cumberland for stripers? So might want to tell him about the night bite. Hey, anybody? That's a secret along fishing circles. They don't like talk about the Cumberland night bite. But no, the Cumberland night bite is typically in May, right?
Yep. I think it runs, until it starts getting around 70 or so, and then it starts dying down a little bit.
It could be late April, May, and June,
Yeah.
early June.
And a
But
lot of that is.
I think it's the alewives are up spawning against the bank, and those stripers have figured that out, and they're easy prey right there. So the stripers will be hanging below them, and if you're sitting out there at night, you can hear it. It's like somebody hitting a 2x4 on the water, slapping it, and you throw red fins or jointed thunder sticks and those type things, or slivers just under the surface, and having those things blow up, 10, 15 pound striper blowing up in the dark on your top water is kind of crazy.
And the darker the better.
Yeah, you don't want to have
dark.
lights on.
If there's a moon out, then fish in the shadows of the moon. It's dark, 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 close to the bank a lot of times, on the surface or barely subsurface, and hold on, right?
That's another surprising way that you can catch walleye at Lake Cumberland.
Yeah.
I don't know how many walleye I caught fishing for stripers that way.
But if you're an adrenaline junkie, it is when you have one blow up in the dark and then take off, it's fun.
Oh yeah. All right, next question here is from Brian Livers. Is a permit required to place fish habitat on the banks of Rough River Lake during the drawdown? Good question. Do you need a permit to do that?
I've never had that question.
Yeah, you
That would
probably need
be Corps.
to, being a Corps.
Speak with the Corps of Engineers and see how they go about handling, being able to place stuff. Just without speaking with them, I would consider that as littering.
Yeah.
Without having their permission to do so, then.
It's their body of water, so putting out habitat, you might want to talk to the Corps of Engineer. I will tell you this, if you're a person who likes to fish in the summer months or throughout the year, I had a buddy call me up, said he went down to Nolin, and unfortunately he didn't have a really good fishing day, but he told me, you won't believe all the spots I marked. Going out on these reservoirs before the water comes up, it's absolutely perfect to mark good later on in the year fishing spots, because a lot of times if you'll take your boat and you'll get right up on the edge of the water in shallow water and you see a fishing structure that might be 2 feet out of the water, where you mark that right there is where you want to park your boat to fish that.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'll go onto these reservoirs. I may spend half of the day in the middle of the day when the fishing lull kind of hits, marking spots that I want to come back and hit later on in the year. Great time to get out on a 60-degree day if the fishing's not great. Make your fishing trips later in the year better by marking all those structures. Some of them are natural. Some of them are on our website. You can go on there and pick them up off the app. Some of these are natural structures that it's just good to know where they're at.
And
so it's a great
was
time
that about rough? Was that what they were asking about?
They were asking about Rough River Lake.
Yeah, we'll be so rough's going to be down 5 feet probably for the next 8 years. We'll be doing some work for sure. Yeah. You'll get a lot of natural stuff starting to grow like it did at Cumberland too. So they may not necessarily have to put out a whole lot,
I wouldn't work real hard on Rough River because it's not going to be able to fish it for several years, right? And then a lot of the new stuff is going to come up on its own. So Rough River Lake is going to have tons of habitat. We have another question here from a texter. What kind of fish are each of you most looking forward to fish for in the coming months?
Oh, wow.
Man.
All of them.
You ask a bunch of fish junkies what they're looking forward to catching, and it's like, man.
I enjoy the crappie in the spring. I also enjoy the bass fishing, getting into some bluegill fishing. But the one I'd probably enjoy the most would probably be bass fishing.
Yeah. What about you?
Bass for sure, and then sunfish, bluegill, red ear.
Okay. What are you looking forward to?
I'm a smallmouth guy, creek fishing. But anymore, I've got to where I let my kids fish, so whatever they want to catch, I'm happy.
Hey, that's a good point. I tell you what, take a kid fishing or introduce someone that's new to fishing. Take them out this year and get them out on the waters. If you know somebody that might be struggling in life and has something going on that needs a little time out, introduce someone to fishing. It's a great way to give them a natural release to be able to get out and enjoy everything we have here to offer in the state of Kentucky. So please consider doing that. I know I've got 2 kids that both enjoy fishing, and I love to be able to get them out on the water and let them fish. What kind of fishing am I looking forward to? Well, I like them all as well, but to me, that white bass run is something that I always look forward to because it kind of kicks off the year for fishing. But I'm one of those weird guys that fish all year round. I like the winter months. Right now, February and March is great for me. I like to get out and chase these walleye. I like to get out and smallmouth fish. And for me, that's some of my favorite fishing. I'm one of those guys that don't like that July and August when you can't beat the heat without getting in the water. my fishing tends to slow down. So right now is a great time to be getting out and doing some fishing. If you want to catch crappie, you want to catch smallmouth, you want to catch walleye, right now, then February and March for me is some of my favorite time to go fishing. And then when that white bass run hits, it doesn't get any better than that. So.
And some of the biggest fish that are caught during the year are caught during this time.
Oh yeah, that's true.
February, March.
February, March is sometimes some of the biggest fish that are caught. Hey, a couple other things to consider doing over the next few months. Camp registration is now open. If you have a kid that you want to introduce them to the outdoors, go online, sign them up for camp. Camp registration is now open. We got 3 camps across the state of Kentucky. We got one on Grayson Lake, Camp Webb. We got one, Camp Wallace, located on Lake Cumberland. And then out west, we have Camp Curry, which is located on Kentucky Lake. So if you got a 4th, 5th, or 6th grader, want to get them involved in the outdoors, Camp Curry, Camp Webb, Camp Wallace are great locations for that. Hopefully you learned something tonight on our fishing question and answer show. But if we didn't get to your question, or if you have a question in the future, our info lines are always open Monday through Friday. You can reach them at 1-800-858-1549. And remember, hunting and fishing on private property is a privilege. Always ask permission and thank the landowner. Until next time, I'm your host, Chad Miles, and I hope to see you in the woods or on the water.